Attention, fans of Unfinished Business Television, we're thrilled to announce our proud partnership with Super 7, the ultimate destination for collectors and pop culture enthusiasts alike. Visit super74.com/AJEPYX today. Use promo code AJEPYX, and let's keep the good times rolling here at Unfinished Business Television.
Hey there, folks. Welcome back. I know it's been a while, but here we are with Unfinished Business Television. I'm your host, Jeff Galashaw, at Unfinished B2 on social media. Or hey, check out any of my many that will be listed in not the comments, underneath the show. With me, as always, is award-winning filmmaker Andre Joseph of AJ Epics Productions, who just recently premiered his latest film.
And we packed that bitch.
Yes. Tell the people about the film and where they could see it. And
Well, The Last Vendetta is my latest feature film. It's the third in a trilogy that started with Dishonorable Vendetta and Vendetta Games, both of which you can find on Amazon Prime. And this latest entry you could also find on Prime as well as on Tubi. And if you have Verizon Fios or Spectrum, you'll be able to do video on demand with it.
yes, check that out definitely, everybody. And don't forget to, if you haven't seen the previous films, I believe Vendetta Games is available on Amazon Prime still.
hmm
What about Vendetta Games 2? Mm,
That you can find on Tubi and on Amazon.
okay. So, yes, definitely check those films out by our own in-house filmmaker. And now we're going to get to the October reviews. Excuse us if these are some of these titles are a little dated. It's been a while. We're playing catch up. And don't forget, we do not get invited to these premieres. Though, if anybody wants to give us tickets, we have no problem going to them. And we will respect the injunctions till when we can actually talk about them if we see them in advance. So let's start off with Hell of a Summer. This horror film directed by Billy Brick and Finn Wolfhard. Is his name actually Finn Wolfhard?
Yeah.
Interesting. It's, for some odd reason, I always thought it was Wolf Hand. But anyway, from Stranger Things, some of you might know him as he wrote, directed, and actually co-stars with Billy Brick in this film. It's a kind of a postmodern horror film mixed in with a summer camp film. It's a comedy, not really a parody, but more of a horror comedy about a overenthusiastic, I guess you could call him head counselor who gets to go back to being a camp counselor and mixes in with all the other camp counselors, only to find out that the owners are missing, and then they find out there's a killer on the loose, and the wacky shenanigans, I guess you could say, that happens as the killings surmount and everything is not as it seems. Um, Andre, you saw this film way before I did. I saw this only recently. What did you think of Hell of a Summer? Mm,
Felt it was a mixed bag. I do think that Finn Wolfhard has potential as a director, just like Zoe Kravitz did with her debut, neither of which was like fantastic, but you could see the talent there. This movie does have its nods to Friday the 13th, Nightmare no, well, not Nightmare,
I was
Scream.
gonna say, huh?
Yeah, no, there's no supernatural elements in this. No, it's like Friday the 13th, Scream, and I Know What You Did Last Summer, kinda like all wrapped up, and you can even say a little bit of Scary Movie in there because of the comedy element in play. And so, it's violent, it's also very silly and does subvert some tropes with certain characters. And I definitely could say I didn't see the twist coming because there are some deaths that you think are permanent and they're not. So I'm not going to spoil it anymore if you haven't seen the movie yet. I think my biggest problem was the head counselor, the 24-year-old kid, because he just felt to me as if there was just something mentally unstable about him. And I know he's supposed to be this
Mhm.
likable kid. He's trying to get along with everybody. He's trying to be nice. But at the same time, it becomes so redundant to where I just get so annoyed by this kid that I'm really thinking he might be mentally disabled somehow. And they don't really get too deep into his backstory other than the fact that he's been doing it for so long that he doesn't really have much of a life outside of being a counselor. So I don't know. There's some things that maybe some more polishing on the script could have helped. Not even so much because the acting's fine, but I just am, like, midway mild on this. I wasn't totally impressed with it, but I see the potential for Finn Wolfhard as a director and his co-director in there.
Yeah, I wanted to like this more. I mean, I liked it, I think, more than I'm looking at the online reviews that are like brutal towards this film. I think I liked it a little bit more, maybe because of the nostalgia, the throwback, the homages, because I really liked the characters. I mean, they're all pretty much, most of them are one note, but they were at least fun and kept the thing. It almost felt like a sketch group was doing a horror comedy watching this film. That's how I felt. But I agree with you about the lead. I think it would have helped if we got a little more backstory into why he's so like enthusiastic that he's basically in Arrested Development, even though he looks way older than 24. I
Yes,
agree
he
with most of
does.
the characters. I was like, this dude's older than 24. But I found it interesting also that the writer directors, I mean, Finn Wolfhard is probably the biggest name in this film, but they also wrote themselves as the most interesting characters in the film. You know, they were the only ones who were like kind of not exactly leads, but like right below. Like they made sure you knew where those characters were all the time, you know? And I enjoyed those characters, but again, it's just like, really? You're gonna write and direct and then, give yourself the best roles other than the lead, you know? So, it's not this film's fault, but this is something I'm gonna get on a lot more with horror films. Now, I know I have famously said I don't necessarily always enjoy seeing black people in horror films because, I feel like we go through enough horror and trauma every day. But then you do want to see yourself represented in these films. But my thing is, it's the same thing. I'll admit, I haven't seen I Know What You Did Last Summer, the reboot, but I have seen the trailer. And just putting one or two minorities in a movie does not equal diversity. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
It still feels whitewashed and they just feel placed there. Like here, there are, I guess you could say this has a little more diversity because I believe one of the female characters might have been Middle Eastern. And look, I'm not going to watch every film like, okay, what's the race of everybody? But I just don't like when these modern, uh, not even horror films, it's also filmed when they say they're diverse and they only put, let's say, two people of color who are minor supporting characters at that and don't really give them a character to play. It's just they don't say, "Oh, that's the black girl or that's the black guy," but it's kind of implied because you give them no personality, and I guess I'm tired of that. It's not this film in particular that gets annoying, but while watching it, like you said, one of the twists that happens, I was upset early in the film because I wanted to say, "Oh, of course." One of the first characters killed minority, and it's not like you have a bunch of them in here. So, but and also I realize this film is very whitewashed or white bread, you could say to a certain extent. So I can't get too hard on this film, and the filmmakers are still young. So I'm just saying, if people see my recent reviews and like, why is he bringing up race? Because I want more representation. I want to be treated as normal, but also represented. This especially goes with black female characters. But that is another subject. I will say for this film, I give it I can't say I give it a recommendation, but I'd say if you're just looking for something to watch and looking for something that a little witty, I'd say go for this film. But I don't think like recommending this like everybody's gonna love it. And so what would you give the film? Mm.
I give it my recommendation. I don't think it's as terrible as the critics say, but at the same time, it's kind of rough around the edges with the script, some of the characterizations. But I think the potential is there for these guys to do better work down the line.
Yeah, I felt like now I'm a big theater advocate, movie theater advocate, but this felt a little more straight to streaming than like something that you must see in a theater. But like I said, it's a nice attempt. Hopefully, better luck next time with the film, guys. And again, sorry if I went a little off on the diversity thing. Maybe it's today's politics. Who knows? But next, going for something that came out even super earlier in the year and a little jump in genre. We're going to talk about Jason Statham's yearly travel to the cinema with A Working Man, directed by David Ayer, who directed him in The Beekeeper. And this film is actually co written by David Ayer and actually co written by Sylvester Stallone, of all people, who apparently planned on this being more of a franchise as a television series, but I guess then decided let's just try and make this into a movie franchise. And I don't know if this film exactly was a hit or if it made modest box office. Um,
It did very well.
okay, so I will say this for the film. It's okay. Jason just Statham movies usually have a formula. He's some ex-military cop, something who's just trying to lead a peaceful life. This time they give him a child because he usually sometimes has a child, and it's always a daughter. I've noticed he never has a son in a movie, at least none that live. So, um, and the reason why I think Jason Statham is the perfect action hero for today. He's not exactly American, but he could be. It's with his kind of voice, but you notice the British accent. I still call him the British Bruce Willis, because same type of movie role, same type of aura. He's like an old school type of guy, even though, he did compete for a gold medal in diving in real life. Um, and also the fact Jason Statham seems to know what to do. He doesn't associate with any political party. He rarely gives interviews, and if he does, he doesn't really disclose too much about his personal life. He pretty much sticks to the script of promoting the movie and maybe some funny story from his past. And he appears to have a sense of humor about himself. And we only have to see him once a year. And it's always going to be the same type of film. But I will say this, I enjoyed The Beekeeper a lot more than I enjoyed this film. I felt like The Beekeeper had a sense of humor about itself. It was kind of a fun adventure. It had wacky villains. This film just seemed more cut and dry, straight to the point, and I think it lacked a really interesting villain in the first place. Like, even with Jeremy Irons and The Beekeeper, you still had Josh Hutcherson as the kind of off the wall. Here, you get his old lock, stock, and two smoking barrels buddy, Jason Fleming, playing a Russian mob boss. And then, something happens, and then all of a sudden we get this guy's crazy brother, as Jason Statham is hunting down the Russian son who's behind this sex trafficking. And then we get an obligatory scene where the girl who he's going after gets her own revenge, instead of him getting revenge. And one of the most annoying things is, did you ever see the movie Keanu with Key and Peele?
I saw some of it, yeah.
Now, remember they played these assassins with trench coats, supposedly the most dangerous assassin who are sadists. When I saw the hitmen in this film, I couldn't help but think, did Sylvester Stallone just see that movie? Because he wrote them exactly, and they go out the same way. they don't even really do anything. It's like they set him up like, oh, it's like that Simpsons episode where uh the Yakuza goes up against the mob, and Homer's like, wait, that guy from the Yakuza is gonna really do something bad. And then as soon as he leaves, he does his move that none of us see, and he sees, oh, I told you, Marge. That's what it felt like with these assassins. It's like, oh, they're gonna be big and bad, they're gonna be his challenge. And it was like, that's it. So I have to say, I'm not gonna recommend this. I love Jason Statham. I love, Jason Statham movies usually. I'm getting to be that age, but this just felt like, hey, even though it's based on a franchise of novels, this just felt like, hey, I like Taken too. So let's write something close enough to Taken, but not Taken. And it's like your other big name in this, David Harbour, does nothing. He's here for like an extended cameo. And then I'm just like, and Michael Pena, I think we gotta find you a new agent, man, because you deserve better than this. You should have at least either been the villain or at least have David Harbour's role instead of I'm just concerned parent. I'm like, was John Leguizamo busy? So yeah, I really wanted to like it, but I cannot recommend this movie. Andre, what did you think of A Working Man as more the action aficionado?
Let's face it, Jason Statham is the modern day Charles Bronson. The same formula of a guy that's always got to right the wrongs of people. And his movies are typically popcorn programmers that are 1 week in, 1 week out. Although in this case, this kind of program Snow White. So it actually ended up doing better business based on its budget because people just like that escapism, especially a certain political party, even though he doesn't really necessarily affiliate with them as far as we know. However, the script does have its share of elements of sex trafficking, something Stallone dabbled in with the last Rambo movie. So that might say something about his politics, if you ask me. But yeah, I think that like the beekeeper was fun because you knew what you were getting, right? This is a revenge film. It's got a little bit of that John Wick thing going on where he's part of a secret group that is very covert and nobody knows the whole backstory behind it. And you're already set up to root for this guy because you have Felicia Rashad losing all her fortune and killing herself, and you want to see him kick Jeremy Irons' ass and Josh Hutcherson's ass. And
Yes, they broke Claire Huxtable.
yes, exactly. But here, okay, so they take Michael Pena's daughter, and this guy is supposed to be so close to this family, he's going to take action himself. So we've already seen this play out, except here it's played more straight than the beekeeper. And so you get some fun stuff like the bit where he has to go and talk to the big black dude who's got his little gang. And I'm thinking maybe they're going to team up and be pals,
Yes.
but then they end up having to try to fight each other at the end, spoiler alert, which I thought was kind of messed up that you have to kill the brother, right? And I agree with David Harbour. You have this whole hype in the trailers. He's in this, but all he does is just exposition scenes. He should be in the action. He's a big enough star to do that. And it's just paint by numbers of an action film. It's basically just escapist entertainment. I can't say it was terrible. It's fine for what it is, but it certainly was a big step down from The Beekeeper. And so, yeah, I would probably give this just very minuscule recommendation. I don't think it's great. This is more of a streaming movie, not something you would pay to see in the theater. If you like Jason Statham, you'll have a good time, but it's not going to be a Beekeeper type of fun ride.
Yeah, because, interestingly enough, they filmed this back to back with The Beekeeper, and I feel
Oh,
like they used up all their energy on The Beekeeper, and this was just like, "Okay, let's go do this," like an assignment, and like you said, they built up the, black guy, and then he basically commits another, black film character cliche. He pretty much sacrifices himself,
yeah.
and I'm just like, "Really?" It's like after you make him so interesting a character, then that? And I was tired of that couple that was, I guess, the agents for the sex trafficking.
Yeah.
And why always is the sex traffic like the guy who wants the process. Why has he always got to be short, fat, and bald? I feel personally attacked here. It's like there's no like middle-aged older gentleman who's maybe a little tall who could be
You
a
could
sex driver.
blame Harvey Weinstein for that.
I mean, well, at least Harvey Weinstein's somewhat tall. It's
Not
even
anymore. You see him?
well, no, he's too busy faking being sick and hungover. Like, I need to get out.
It's like Abe
And
Vigoda, he just won't die.
it's like, yes, and he's in jail. So he's not even supposed to be getting that great medical attention.
Right.
So I'm just like, but that I don't know. It's just like, how are you making it still? It's like, and still you want to keep tying things up in court. You're guilty. Just go. They're not letting you out. You're Bernie Madoff at this point.
Yeah. Career's over.
Exactly. Or why don't we show them like allegedly they really are in certain positions in the White House? But Stallone wouldn't let it. I don't
He
think.
could name names if he really wanted to.
I'm sure he does, but he likes his money. Instead, he's going to be like, hey, let's have the pervert look like Burt Young. Instead of, hey, let's let him look like Raymond J. Barry. you know,
Burt Young is a very sweet guy. I met him, rest in peace.
well, I'm not trying to insult him, but I'm just
No, no,
saying,
I don't take insults.
okay. Because I'm like, but it's always that type of look. It's like, hey, yeah, he couldn't be the pervert of the film, could he? Okay, I'll say Burt Young in Amityville too. How's that? So
Or
that
that
type
movie
of
with Carrie Wurr where she shoots him in the balls with a shotgun.
I don't
It's an
even know that
HBO
movie.
movie on a
Okay, I
Thursday
was gonna
night.
say, I don't even know that one. I'm like, and I thought I knew all Carrie were her movies. Um, okay, so moving on. Speaking of violence, we're going to talk about Final Destination Bloodlines, the latest in the Final Destination movies, and unfortunately, the final one for rest in peace Tony Todd, who has a cameo in this film. Now, I will admit, when I heard they were resurrecting this, I was just like, more of the same. But then I saw the trailer and I was like, wait, this could actually be decent. And I am happy to say I really like this film more than I expected to. I mean, it still kind of follows the paint by numbers, curse this time upon a family, bloodline. Um, it still has the jump scares. I mean, it's doing what a lot of modern horror films are doing, where they give you that fake jump scare, and then just when you breathe a sigh of relief, that's when the real like gore or shocking scene happens. And I really enjoyed this film. I mean, it has a spectacular opening credit sequence with the restaurant, the premonition, and then what actually happens. It's not afraid to go there in certain scenes, even though some deaths feel like, we got to get rid of this character. Let's just have this happen. Um, the only problem, maybe, is I'm getting older. These films just feel unexceptionally cruel to a certain extent. And I know going into that, that's what to expect. But then sometimes they have you kind of bond with the character and only to like then get rid of them. And it's like, damn, that was kind of fucking cold. I mean, at least Tony Todd, they give grace, because he was obviously sick or on his way out when you see him in this film. And I like how they connected, and I'm all for them resurrecting this franchise a la Scream. And I they're guilty pleasures. I'll keep going to see it, but I hope they keep it this smart and not on autopilot like the last few films were, where they just tried to throw in a little twist and be like, "Aha!" Now, Andre, I know you're not the biggest horror fan. How do you feel about not only Final Destination Bloodline, but the franchise as a whole? Mm.
Well, I really liked the original one when it came out. I love the concept of death coming after everybody from surviving accident that they should have died in. So that first film was pretty solid. And then I wasn't as thrilled with 2 and 3, and I stopped after 3. I didn't watch the other ones like the Final Destination or the one that came after that. So I didn't really have too much hype for this initially, other than knowing it was gonna be the last with Tony Todd in it, and then I saw the reviews being so glowing that I was like, "Okay, I gotta find a way to check this out," and yeah, I think it absolutely does live up to the hype, and I think it's the best sequel out of all the ones they've made, because, yes, it's still the paint by numbers of there's a big accident, and then death is coming after everybody that survived it, except now it's this family bloodline thing that goes on. But at least now there's more explanation, more backstory about Tony Todd, about how Death's pattern actually works. Having the one woman that survived this accident have to like be isolated from everybody and knows what's coming to her. Like basically, no matter what, this thing's gonna come for you even when you're sick. So, at least they kind of played that up that there's just really no escaping this thing. I love the opening sequence and all the deaths, especially the little boy, who was just, like, annoying as hell.
Jeez. Yes.
Um, I think it was the most brutal deaths of the entire series between the father getting killed with stabbing his foot with the glass shard and getting killed with the lawnmower, but the worst for me, the one that made me cringe had to be in the hospital, the kid with all the piercings, and what
Oh, okay.
happens with this little Prince Albert. That was like, "Ooh, really? They went there? Oh my god." The kid that was allergic to peanut butter. I mean, stuff like that, I think this movie, maybe more than the others, really taps into some real fears, like being on, that Space Needle type of building and the fear of it being so high up that it's gonna crumble on you. So I think those things work, and Tony Todd, I think they really did a fantastic job of how they sent him off. Nothing extravagant, just the grace of it, as you mentioned, of that he knows what's coming and he just accepts it. Like, "Hey, this is me, just enjoy the rest of your time." And I think that said a lot, So and by the way, something I didn't realize till I came on, John Watts of Spider-Man wrote the story for this. So
Ah.
clearly that's probably one of the reasons why there was some quality to this movie compared to the others. So I definitely recommend this. I think you could skip past all the other sequels and just stick with the first one and this movie.
Um, I agree with you. I recommend it. I still say watch the sequels. I think maybe if you watch the sequels, you'll appreciate this one more because you'll see from the depths of where the last few came to like how good. And now I can't. I feel like I can't complain about the Saw movies anymore because even though they keep making those, they took a break, came back, I'm not gonna say better than ever, but at least it feels a little fresher than it was if they would have just kept going year after year of making, these films. Like, again, if I was still kind of supporting the Scream sequels, I'd suggest maybe these guys should have taken over directing duties, for that film. But I will say this franchise still stays very Canadian, even though it's supposed to be anywhere USA. I'm like, yeah, I can tell this is Canada.
Yeah, because there were at
It's
least two actors I thought I'd seen in other things, and it turned out no, they were Canadian actresses. So that's the only other thing I would complain about this movie. There's not enough star power in it outside of Tony Todd.
Yeah, because I'm like, most of these people, I'm like, but that's good because if there was a star, you'd be like, oh, they're gonna live or they're gonna be the first to die.
Hmm.
So here you're just like, I don't know. They're not, I've never seen them before. Though I will say I love the scene in the tattoo piercing shop. And
Mm.
I thought that was like one of the other than the opening, that was probably one of the best directed and tension filled scenes throughout this film. So, staying on that same track, we are going to talk about Zack Creger's latest film, Weapons. This was that big mystery project that nobody and everybody was trying to guess what it was about, with children disappearing and all from one class except for one student, and then what it ultimately was. Andre, I'm going to ask you, what was your opinion of Weapons?
I loved it. I loved the way that it built and how it unfolded all throughout. You know, I tried really, really hard to not read any spoilers on this. Unfortunately, there were some things being talked about Amy Madigan's performance that were starting to kind of give me the sense of where the story was headed. But it didn't ruin the experience for me at all. I thought just from starting with Julia Gardner's story to then Josh Brolin and then with Alden Ehrenreich and then eventually to build up to the finale, I thought they did a fantastic job with it. Zack Creeger, he learned a lot since Miss March. Let's put it that way. The man has grown to be a very talented filmmaker. I wouldn't say he's Jordan Peele level talented, but he's up there for sure in terms of today's horror films. And just I think there was just a lot of things in there that really felt like this was a modern day fairy tale. This is a witchcraft story, really, at its core, and these kids being used. And at the same time, Krieger doesn't shy away from the comedic aspects of it, particularly with what happens when these kids kind of get awakened towards the end that I really enjoyed. And it was a nice little payoff. Now, Julia Garner still suffers to me from the problem Jenna Ortega does, where she looks too damn young, and in this case, too damn young to be playing a school teacher, although, they say she hasn't been doing it for very long, so that's one of the reasons they kind of explain that away. And she's an elementary school teacher, she's not a high school teacher, thank God. But the fact that, yeah, we're gonna try to sexualize her with this relationship with Alden Ehrenreich. Like, okay, why is Alden Ehrenreich with this hot big booby chick and having an affair with her, and that they have to have a gratuitous sex scene? And like, no, you don't need this. That you could have cut out a couple minutes out of this movie, and it would have been just fine. You didn't need that stuff. I'm glad it's Josh Brolin and not Pedro Pascal playing the grieving father because Pedro's working enough. I think Brolin needs to get his flowers every now and then too, and I thought he worked pretty well here. That crazy scene with was it the principal, the Asian
Yeah.
guy from Doctor Strange who goes on a rampage and then starts trying to like go after Julie Gardner in the gas station. That was crazy as hell. And Alden Ehrenreich chasing after the junkie and getting stabbed with the needle. I thought there was gonna be more of a payoff with that, and I don't think that was
Same.
quite there. That was a weird thing that the writers tried to throw in. But all in all, very tension filled, very violent, and just again, a build up with a great payoff. And Amy Madigan, I'm not gonna go as far as everybody else saying that she should be getting an Oscar, but I will say with the kind of makeup they gave her, she was probably taking some notes from her husband with Love Lives Bleeding, because something with that hair, she probably could have passed as her husband if she really wanted to. They could have made this character transgender, and then the right wing would be pretty happy with that. But no, she was fantastic. I thought she was awesome. Highly recommend this movie.
Yeah, I would say if I had a girlfriend, that would be our costumes this year. She goes as Amy Madigan in that movie, and I'll go as Ed Harris in Love Lies Bleeding, just so I can get the hair extensions. Um, this movie, I liked. Don't get me wrong, I like this movie. I'm not in love with it as much as everybody else, though. I think it's a fine film. I think it's good filmmaking. I enjoyed myself watching it, but it just didn't hit me like how everybody else did. I still like Barbarian more than this. I'll admit this is a bigger scale film, and I liked it. I like that this is more of an ensemble film. I agree with you partly about Julia Garner. I had no problem with her believability, but she does skew young. But I mean, in real life, she's like 27 years old. So she can't help that. I agree with you about Josh Brolin. It was interesting that Brian Tyree Henry was supposed to play Benedict Wong's role. That would have been a little interesting.
He doesn't
Yeah,
strike me as explosive.
I don't think so. It also wouldn't give you Big Trouble in Little China, the ending vibes either. Because I was like, I know this is wrong, but why, when he's in that state, it looks like when the guy's just blowing himself up at
Yeah.
the end of Big Trouble in Little China. I couldn't help it. The only thing that was missing was steam coming out of his nose. So I really wish the Alden Elric storyline and Austin Abrams could have been like one of the more major plot lines because that was just such an interesting dynamic. And that really showed like we're really seeing this one thing from all different angles or different perspectives. You know, I will if I knew her, I'd be like, "I will tell June Diane Raphael that you really think she's hot in this movie," playing his wife. I like seeing my man Toby Huss as his father-in-law, the sheriff. I thought that was a little too spot on the nose, like, of course, his boss would have to be his wife's father. But like I said, I enjoyed the film. Like I said, I wasn't in love with it as much as everybody else, and I feel like this is another thing, maybe a little bit of overpraise where something is original, decent, we give it such accolades when it's like, if we had more quality entertainment, this would still be above average, but we wouldn't necessarily call it excellent. But since half the time when we go to see a horror film or a thriller, it's so subpar that we're just like, if anything stands out, it's like, oh, it's excellent. And so I'm not trying to insult the film. I'm not trying to insult Zack Creeger or the audiences who love this film. But maybe it's because I can also see more of the influences of this film than it truly being like this, like, oh, I didn't see this coming. Like, again, you can say what you want about Sinners, and yeah, it reminds you from Dusk Till Dawn, but there's also a cultural history tied in there and something we haven't seen before. Whereas here, he mixes in, obviously, Magnolia, he mixes in
The
Prisoners.
Leftovers.
Exactly. It's stuff you've seen and like, okay, he makes a jambalaya. Of course, it's an original recipe, but it's like, this tastes familiar. It's that's what I felt watching this film. I mean, it'll probably still be on, like, maybe my top 20 of the year, but it's not, let me put it this way, Sinners ain't got nothing to worry about of it overtaking it, for me. Um, I know Jordan Peele was very pissed that his Monkey Paw Productions didn't get to produce this, so much so that he fired his handlers. And I could see this as kind of in a Jordan Peele wheelhouse. Not something he'd necessarily make, but the types of films he wants to put out there. So I will give it an above average recommendation, but I'm not you, like the high recommendation. I'm like, it's worth it. And definitely, I will say this so far is the first film on this list where I can say, see it in theaters. This
Yes.
is, or the biggest screen you can, and watch it all the way through. Do not pause. Do not watch it on your phone. This is a cinematic experience. So, um, that is Weapons, and, no offense to Pedro Pascal, this is one that you were really good, for passing on to do Eddington, of all films. Interestingly enough, Renette Reinsve from Worst Person in the World was his first choice for Julia Garner's role, and then he tried offering it to Elizabeth Olsen and Rooney Mara, and they both turned it down. I'm like, "Yeah, Elizabeth Olsen, I'm sure whatever the reason you turned it down, I hope you enjoyed what you made." But, nothing personally against her. Uh, our next film, which might be actually our biggest, most controversial film we talk about, if you go by online reviews now that it's been released by Apple Plus, Highest to Lowest, directed by the great Spike Lee, but written by Alan Fox. Keyword, written by someone else. And obviously based on the Japanese classic by Akira Kurosawa, High and Low, and bringing Denzel Washington back into the fold of 40 Acres and a Mule. For those who don't know this story, Denzel Washington plays a record executive whose son gets kidnapped, and he is trying to do a corporate takeover. And if he pays the ransom, it will be all of his money. And then it ends up it's not his son, but his kind of best friend, chauffeur son. And the thing is, will he pay the money? And then we go from there to all these other sort of misadventures, the money drop off, the um kind of finding out who the kidnapper is and confronting them. And now the thing online is that you have the two camps. the purists who love this and like, how could Spike Lee remake it? Then you have the people who are like, I liked it for what it was. And then there is one person who I follow who then broke down where they saw all the problems. And then there's just Torre being a hater. So I will say I had the worst theater experience of the year watching this, but I liked the film. But I can agree with it felt like a bunch of different movies all in one. Mm. Like there's the Spike Lee social commentary in a lot of scenes and showing the way modern business works. But then there's this kind of crime kidnapping plot line, and there's a great kind of chase scene in the middle of the film of him dropping off the money, so to speak, in all the different ways. And it's scored to Eddie Palmieri and the Puerto Rican Day Parade. So you can't get more New York than that. And this is really where Spike is showing his Knicks love and how much he hates Boston, because plenty of people in this film talk badly about Boston and the Celtics. So that's probably the one part where Spike Lee put in his, I guess, commentary and some of the little jokes. Um, I'm gonna say I give this a recommendation, but here I can see where the fault lines in this movie are. And one of the things that is a problem. Now, did you ever see High and Low?
No, unfortunately, I have been exposed to enough Kurosawa.
Okay, well, basically High and Low, the first act of the film is pretty much, the whole kidnapping story. But then the second act becomes more of a police procedural, sort of like a Law and Order, where the cops, figure out how to find the guy, uh, follow his trail. And I don't know if that was the blueprint for the show Law and Order in the first place, but I guess here, obviously, he is a black filmmaker and he's not the biggest fan of cops, so he's not gonna make a movie praising the cops. He had Inside Man for that. So, the cops here are more regular street detectives, even though they're experts. But again, this is, I guess, you gonna spend this much money on Denzel, you gotta put him in as much of your movie as you can. So, he's at the beginning, the middle, the end, where he confronts the kidnapper. And I will say, spoiler, ASAP Rocky, not a bad actor, even though it's not really a stretch for him because he's playing a wannabe rapper who's middle aged. You know, um, there are various cameos. You have Ice Spice, barely recognizable with her natural hair color. You have Princess Nokia playing ASAP Rocky's girlfriend. You have Nicholas Turturro coming out of nowhere in this film. I liked the dramatic dynamics, like him, his wife, and their little drama, and even that closing scene with him signing a new artist. Um, this is the first time I can really see Denzel aging. Like when they tried to put him in these nice suits, you could tell like in the waves, it's like he just looks like that old man who's still trying to look hip. But he gives a strong performance. I don't know what that payback scene was, where he's driving in the car and playing James Brown and doing, I'm like, okay, so you needed a police force for this kidnapping, but now just you and Jeffrey Wright are gonna take this guy down. And didn't he have to pay all those people for the whole, interlocking changing of money? They never explained that. I know it's a movie, but still. And you drove that expensive car to Harlem at night and with just the two of you? And I mean, he gets a bigger role, but Jeffrey Wright, you just got nominated for an Oscar. This is the role you get, you know? And I guess he's playing a Muslim.
Yeah.
And is there like a thing where it's like, hey, if it has basketball, I gotta sign Rick Fox to be in this film?
Of all
Because
people.
I know it's like you couldn't just get an ex Nick to
You
play
get
in this film.
Carmelo Anthony, he's available.
Exactly. He probably needs the money too. Divorce costs money. Child support costs money. But you get an LA Laker? So I'm just like, and the pretty one at that? you know,
Maybe he's paying off Vanessa Williams' divorce still.
Vanessa Williams got her own money. She don't need Rick Fox money. So, yeah, I'm like, is Rick Fox the only like basketball playing actor? Because I'm like, why always Rick Fox? No offense to Rick Fox, he does okay, you know. But I give this, I don't care. Haters gonna hate. I give this a recommendation. And what did you think of Highest to Lows?
In my controversial opinion, this was the best movie I saw all summer long, and that's not to dismiss something like, say, F1 or some of the other movies that came out, but come on, we've been so abundant with superhero movies and other stuff that's been kind of like just either okay or flat out terrible. It was just a nice, refreshing thing to see a Spike Lee movie and for him to work with Denzel again and for it to be as entertaining as it was. Now, again, I have not seen High to Low. I really do need to see more Kurosawa movies, especially for me as a filmmaker to get inspiration. I just really enjoyed the hell out of it because of the fact that it reminded me of Ransom. It reminded me of Inside Man. It reminded me of a better version of the Take It to Pelham 1, 2, 3 to remake. And I just liked all the performances all around. I thought the train sequence with the trying to drop off the money, that was so well crafted by Spike between the Puerto Rican Day Parade music. You got the Rosie Perez, Anthony Ramos cameos in there, and the whole tension with like the bikes and switching up the money here and there. And so that stuff really did excite me. There's the social messaging, but also they do pull it back a little bit. It doesn't get into Trumpism or anything like that. So there's a little bit of an escape on this film. But
Mhm.
there is something that I really did like that he injected, which was when you do find out about the villain of the film, the real kidnapper, it then gets into a greater story about first, it starts with Denzel having to compromise with the changes in the record business, right? That's one of the reasons
Mhm.
why, like, he's trying to hold on to his business for dear life that it makes it so difficult for him to pay to save Jeffrey Wright's son. But then you have this other thing that goes on about the way social media pumps up these artists to be a big deal, even if they don't have the greatest talent. And so, ASAB Rocky's character thinks, oh, once I get busted, I'm going to be 10 times popular now because of this with my following. And Denzel is more old school. He believes in raw talent. So there is that underlying commentary there that also adds to what's already an otherwise entertaining film just on the ransoms premise itself. Two things that kind of do hurt it just a bit for me. I agree with you about the cops. It was very standard, and especially Dean Winters. Obviously, seeing him and everything from Oz to those commercials he does, his mayhem. I mean, that dude clearly is an underlying racist, and they don't
Yes.
shy away from playing that up. I thought maybe something was going to go down with him towards the end. And the other thing too, this you talk about your audience that saw it. Now, the audience I saw it with, they reacted at the right moments. They were into it. But there was one moment that really threw me off, and that's when Denzel, like after he hears the dude's song and then has to go and confront Jeffrey Wright's kid. Is this the song you heard when you were taken? And then Jeffrey Wright goes on the cell phone and he starts texting. I thought for a split second that Jeffrey Wright was in on the kidnapping, that he purposely set the whole thing up.
Mhm.
And and that's why I thought maybe he was going to go in, he was going to pop Denzel or try to, and that could have made it interesting for a third act, but they don't go there. It's pretty straight, cut and dry. And you got your big chase scene at the end. And that's why I say I compare it as a better version of Taking Pelham 1, 2, 3, because at least here, I can kind of believe Denzel would take charge and go after this guy, whereas his meek MTA dispatcher grabbing a gun and chasing John Travolta. I can't see you doing that. Like, here's your money, sir. Now let me go home now. Get milk for my mom. Like, no, you're not going to do that. But at least I can buy it here that this guy may have a little bit of a badass streak. And by the way, another thing that was a little bit of a peeve for me that I don't think anybody's pointed out. So you remember he's in the scene where he's in his home office and he starts speaking to all the pictures of like Muhammad Ali and all the dead black legends. And then he's talking to Stevie Wonder like he passed away. I'm like, No, he's still alive. You can just call up Stevie if you wanted to. He did just Jungle Fever soundtrack. So that bothered me a little bit, but otherwise, I really enjoyed it. I know you give it a recommendation. I give it a high recommendation.
Well, maybe he knows something about Stevie we don't.
I
But
hope not.
see,
Put that
that
man in
was
bubble wrap.
well, see, here was that was one of my problems actually with the movie, the score, because at times it's so overwrought that you're just like,
Yes.
okay, I get the emotion you're trying to go for. You can lay it back down. Go back to Terrence Blanchard.
That's been yeah, okay, so that was the other thing too. Where was Terrence Blanchard? And this is a problem I think in Spike Lee's movies in general. I'm fine with, like, the source music that he uses, like Ain't No Stopping Us Now or using Payback, but then, like, when it comes to dramatic scenes, like when he's talking to his son in his room and he has to overplay it with the score, you don't need this. Like,
Exactly.
just
Let it
let
be
the
raw.
acting breathe, right. You don't need to
Mhm.
overdo it with the drama because then it becomes a soap opera.
Exactly, and that would be something Akira Kurosawa would do, something more raw, not let the score do the work or inform the audience and let it manipulate the audience, because then you cheapen the moment, and but I did like in that scene where his son tries to like it's sort of like that Bill Cosby Show scene where Theo's like, "You should just be proud of me for trying my best," and blah blah blah. And then he's like, "Yeah, no, boy, what kind of BS?" Is that?" I like that Denzel's character after he let his son talk to him that way, like, "Who do you think you are? This is my house." You know that I enjoyed that scene. Might be just my on-screen crush. Princess Nokia needs more work. She needs to be in more films, Spike Lee or otherwise, because even just in her really 1 or 2 scenes, I was captivated and wanted to see more of her or do something more with her character. A$AP Rocky, I mean, I know he already has an acting career with Dope and, you know, being Mr. Rihanna. So I don't mind him as a screen presence. You know, I still want my Damson Idrises and John Boyegas, you know, naturally trained actor. But if you got to go to a rapper as an actor, I have no problem with him.
I
Um,
agree that the casting director definitely nailed it on the leading ladies.
yes. I mean, well, Denzel's wife in the film has played in Spike Lee stuff before. So it's like,
And
okay.
she's on Godfather of Harlem. She's just yummy.
Okay, I haven't really seen that show, but I did recognize her from She's Gotta Have It, the series, and of course, his infamous Chirac, you know? And so, hey, we all gotta work. So, but I think that's like our most controversial film that we talked about this week. But you know, we are big Spike Lee fans over here. So it's um next, our final film, our recent release, we're going to be talking about the Darren Aronofsky crime comedy thriller Caught Stealing, with Austin Butler, Zoe Kravitz, Liev Schreiber, Vincent D'Onofrio, and I'm shocked that this wasn't bigger box office because Bad Bunny, you know, for all those people who are praising Happy Gilmore too, just because Bad Bunny was in it. Where were you for him here? It's and about the same size of role, you know. Um, I'll let you talk about this one first, and then I will give my opinion. And
This is one of those movies that I think going into it, I wanted to like it more than I did. I never read the book. I know there's
neither do
supposed
I.
to be a series of them, so actually the story of Austin Butler's character doesn't end with this. Um, it's one of those movies so when we saw it, they had the trailer for Martin Scorsese's After Hours to kinda set the tone of what this movie was going to be, and hence having Griffin Dunne in there as the, crusty, coke-addicted bartender in the film. Um, I think it captures a New York City vibe pretty good. You know, it's supposed to be what? The Manhattan, then he goes to Queens, and he goes to Brooklyn, so it's all over the map, and it's very much a modern day noir. It's set in the late '90s, so they captured that pretty well. Uh, I just felt something felt very short about this. Maybe it was just maybe Matt Smith was overdoing it as just as the punk English dude with the big key that everybody's looking for. Maybe
Well, he is English though in real life.
he's a very good actor, though. I really do enjoy Matt Smith. Maybe it was the fact that Zoe Kravitz was heavily hyped up, but then, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, they kill her off like literally 30 minutes into the film. So,
That's when my heart broke.
yeah, he's pretty much on his own after that. The whole deal with the 2 Jewish guys, and then you got Bad Bunny, so it's like he's got all of these people coming at one another to get him. Um, I just, it was trying to overstuff so much to make it this very brutal type of film noir type of flick, and
Mhm.
then Butler finally taking a stand. And another problem I have, by the way, so this guy's got, like, a busted knee, so he's not supposed to really be able to run around that well, but he's doing so well in these chase sequences, outrunning everybody. That felt a little bit off to me, like this was a suspension of disbelief. This is, I think, what happens when you give Darren Aronofsky a lot of money to do a studio picture. He doesn't excel well, but when he does something small level like The Wrestler or Requiem for a Dream, he's excellent, and he could do a lot of great artistic work. This isn't it. And even the stuff with the cat, I thought was kinda fell short for me. The little animated sequence for the title, let's see it at the end. I felt like this movie was all over the place. It's really hard to recommend it because I just think that it probably had some good ideas, but it just never really quite had a straight tone to it. And I'm not telling you like it had to be played serious. It just felt like it didn't know if it wanted to be like a dark, serious, dark comedy with crime elements, or if it wanted to be more like a Scorsese flick.
Okay. I agree with most of your points here. Um, I felt like spoiler alert, Regina King's character arc
Oh
reminded
yeah.
reminded me of Rosie Perez in Pineapple Express. It was like it was a little bit more of a shock here, but it was just like, really, we're going there. Here's what it was in a nutshell. I, like you, thought it was going to be more crazy going in. And they wanna try to play this a little more ensemble, but it's such a small ensemble that when you're going in, you think this story is gonna be bigger than that, and it's just so kinda small circle tight, especially for what it's about, and it just felt like this is small, and I agree with you with Darren Aronofsky when it comes to budgets, because I guess when you saw Pi, you saw Requiem for a Dream. Even though Requiem for a Dream was obviously more surreal, the whole thing was it felt gritty. It felt realistic. This film, and this is no offense to Darren Aronofsky, because I think he is a good director.
Yeah.
This felt like an old man, a middle-aged man trying to relive his youth. Like some older guy trying to look young. That's what it felt like watching this film. It felt too polished, it felt too glossy, and really I understand why you had to eliminate Zoe Kravitz's character, but considering then the only thing they could threaten him with is, "Okay, we're gonna kill you," or "We know where your mother lives," and I'm just like, "That's it?" Like, at least with Zoe Kravitz still being alive in the film, there was an actual threat of what they could do or who they could go after. But taking her out so early, it was just like, "Okay, you kinda, like, played yourself," but it does pay off well in the end. That twist I thought was the most interesting twist in the film. But Austin Butler doesn't embarrass himself. He does do well in this film. I still kind of look at him and think of him as the good-looking version of Napoleon Dynamite. It's just that delivery, the way he
Yeah.
speaks. I'm sorry. But like I said, he does put in a good performance. Zoe Kravitz, oh, oh. Mhm. I might have some problems with characters she plays, but here, yummy. I was sad to see her go. This is the first time I've been sad to see her go in a film where I'm just like, no, and maybe my heart left with her her being out of the film. I thought it would have been more interesting. I love Regina King. but maybe if Angela Bassett played the role, because we've seen her play cops, we ain't seen her play a dirty cop. And but that's a dream casting. Look, the film as it is, I have a friend who just wrote a review, and I read his review, and we both agreed, like, yeah, you like this way more than I did. It's like we saw two different movies. So I give it a recommendation. It's best seen in theaters, but it's also you can wait. It's not something that at the top of your list of movies you should go out and go see. If you want a movie you should go see now, if depending when this plays, go check out Griffin in Summer. That film I saw recently, ultra low budget film, great film, affecting, nostalgic, not the gritty streets of New York, but it's got Melanie Linsky in it from what is that, show
Yellow
you love?
Jackets.
Yellow Jackets, and who I loved ever since Heavenly Creatures. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry, Aronofsky, I'm usually in your corner. I saw Mother in theaters, so don't you judge me. And I really had to pee by the end. For your 2.5 hour, dream project with your then girlfriend. And and it had its moments. It still makes no sense to me. But I'm just saying, I went there before anybody judges me. It's so, but yeah, I give it, I guess I give it somewhat of a recommendation, but a mild recommendation. And what would you, say?
I don't recommend it.
Wow, not at all. It's
I don't buy Austin Butler, being as ripped as he is, and he's supposed to be an alcoholic like that, especially with all the injuries. And yeah, I agree. I think Regina King was a little miscast in this. I think that I had a hard time believing her to play evil, even though she sort of played kind of a unlikable character in Ray. But here, just I don't know, maybe just personally for me, I don't like seeing her get killed in a movie.
I don't like seeing her play unlikable characters. It's Brenda. That's like putting
Yeah.
that's like when Tyler Perry tries to make Felicia Rashad a villain. It's like, "You can't make Claire Huxtable evil." We grew up with her. So, yeah, there's like a disconnect. So, now if you put Sanaa Lathan, believable. Uh, but but I was happy to see Regina King because she had a semi-retirement due to something that happened personally in her family, so I'm glad she's working again. Um, hopefully bigger and better roles or directing another film. Hey, whose directorial debut goes on Criterion that often? And
Oh, one other question I would ask you, just
okay,
given how I feel about this film. Do you think Quentin Tarantino would have done a better job with this?
I think Spike Lee would have did a better job with
I
this.
was thinking that
And
too.
I I I do think you need a New York director. Because they know those neighborhoods, the ins and outs. I'm not saying
Yeah.
an LA director can't do it, but I feel like it might end up, even though Darren Aronofsky is from New York, it's gonna end up being like this kind of fantasy version of New York, or what they thought the gritty streets of New York were like, instead of what they actually might have been like, you know? Um, oh, also shout out to Action Bronson as the other bar patron, doing coke with, Griffin Dunn, a rapper who, compared himself to Ghostface Killer in his flow, and he's good. He ain't no Ghostface Killer, though. So that does it for all of our reviews for the October edition, or whenever this plays, of reviews. We promise to have new reviews up, new episodes, new interviews up as soon as we can, but hey, we all got lives to lead, don't we? And we always have unfinished business, but that ends our business for this episode. But I have to ask you, other than Griffin in Summer, have you seen hmm, Andre, what would you recommend? Let me think about it. And
Have you seen High Art with Roger Mitchell and Ali Sheedy? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome.
yes, it is. Ali Sheedy, make a comeback, please. And I will say, hmm. Have you seen I might have done this one already, but I don't think so. Have you seen Sorry Baby? If not, why not? Because it's fucking awesome with Naomi Aki and writer, director, star Eva Victor. And with that, we bid you adieu.
If you like this review, please be sure to like and hit subscribe to be alerted to new episodes in the future.